I'll record this. I'll share my screen quickly and kind of talk through some stuff. And one semester going okay up to this point. Work and keeping up with everything.
Yeah, this
It's
is a
busy.
yeah. This is the first 16-week class I've taken in years. Like all my other ones have been
Yeah.
8 weeks. I'm
Yeah.
having a hard time getting used to it.
It is a little different. Pace. Almost. I was just talking. I had 805. So the 805 group we meet every Wednesday, and so they're part of the LRL group. And I was telling them we were reviewing one of the assignments, and one of the examples that I was showing them. I said, "Hey, you got to remember this example here where we plotted data points for testing." I said, that was when we did a 16-week semester. I said, so you're not going to have that many data points, but I wanted to share the particular graph. The student did a good job on it and always use it for an example. And they just kind of looked at me like, I didn't know all these were 16-week classes before. So yeah, this is a little bit different pace. So it's kind of spread out. So,
Yeah.
all right. So basically, just this is a good time to touch base. So we're going into module 2. Module 2 is fairly short. It's 3 weeks. And really the module is going to focus on high leverage practices. And so you're really the readings and some of the concepts that you'll be reviewing the next few weeks in this module are on evidence-based practices. And so in your schools, the districts that you work in, there's going to be some discussion or readings on interventions, types of intervention and evidence-based practices. So two of the most common intervention philosophies you're going to hear about probably in your districts or that you're going to read about is RTI and MTSS. So I'm sure those sound familiar to you. You guys, your district may practice one or the other. And so in MTSS, how many of your districts use MTSS, multiple tier systems of support? Okay. So you have the various tiers, right? You have the tier 1 and you have the tier 2 and 3. So the tier 1 basically is going to encompass everyone. And then when you get into tier 2 and 3, you're going to get into more smaller groups. And then tier 3 is going to be more specific, targeted interventions for 1 to 2 students based on their needs. So something interesting about MTSS, and I was going to share with you, it doesn't necessarily all have to be strictly academic focused. So I'm gonna give you an example in the district that I'm a service superintendent in. This particular district, the county that we're in received a big grant, and it is a 5-year grant cycle, and it's specifically for focusing on student mental health. Okay, so this particular county, there was some gaps in mental health services for adolescents, and so there was a definite need, and there's a educational foundation in Shawnee that felt it was such a need that they stepped up and provided the matching funds on it. They kicked in 3 million. So it's like a $23 million grant. They gave 3 million just for some matching funds. So it's all the interventions are all built around MTSS. The same principle is what you might use for math or reading. We're applying those same principles towards student mental health needs. And so on tier 1, the licensed mental health provider that's assigned for every school got a full-time licensed mental health care provider. They're using MTSS, so they may go in on tier 1 and do some larger, class interventions to a group that may be struggling overall. And then as they get into their tier 2 and tier 3, much like what you do with reading and math, they're doing some small group in that tier 2. And then when they get into tier 3, for this particular grant, it's more one-on-one with the student and their family. So it can be applied in a lot of different things other than a core academic area that they're struggling in, such as reading and math. So is your district using it for anything else besides maybe reading interventions or math?
I'm using, I mean, at the day school that I work, in fact, for my case study, that's what I'm doing,
Yeah,
is because at a day school, our biggest struggle is behavior.
behaviors.
So
Yeah.
it's emotional and mental health is what my tier 2 and 3 is on.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
the tier 1 that we turn in is on the lesson plan you provided, correct?
that's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I just want to share that particular program here is the only one of its kind in the state. It's new this year. So like I said, I really didn't know if we get it. So there are 13 school districts in the county, and each one of them got a full-time licensed mental health care provider. So it's been a lifesaver for a lot of us because we've really been seeing a lot of those issues. That's really some of our biggest issues that we deal with right now, especially coming off COVID, is some of the student mental health, just abnormal behaviors, which I'm sure you guys all see that in your district. It's just become more prevalent, especially on the backside of COVID. So,
Yeah.
anybody? So it looked like most of you that are on here using MTSS. Anybody using RTI? No, most of your districts in Kansas use MTSS. Okay. Seeing a lot of success with that as far as interventions. Seeing students make significant gains. Brenda, I see you shaking your head. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's been very successful in our district.
Okay. Sandra, what about you? You guys, have you seen success with it in yours?
Really have. We just recently started more tier 3 time than we used to do. We have 2 days in the morning of math and 1 day of English language arts in our junior senior high school, and
Yeah.
we have seen a big difference with that. So
So,
we have,
go ahead.
sorry, we have a full-time social worker at our building, and she kind of does, she doesn't call it MTSS, but
Yeah.
she kind of does that sort of thing. She has, she meets with all the students every once in a while, and then a few students kind of
Mhm.
tier 2, and she's got her tier 3 students. She doesn't call it that, but she kind of uses the same system. It's
Principle. Yeah.
that's been really good.
Yeah, it's been just implementing that type of program and using the MTSS model for this particular type of service is a game changer for us compared to what we were seeing the last 2 years. So, big difference.
Yeah.
Dana, what about you as far as on the academic side? Are you seeing some successes utilizing that model?
Yeah, I am, of course. Like I said, my deal is kind of different. I mean, I have 3 kids, and
Yeah.
they're all there basically for behaviors. So, but your behavior reflects on your academics. So, yeah, I have to, and I only have, like I said, 3 students. One of them is 3rd grade, one of them 6th grade, one of them's 9th grade. So I can't really group them together very easily.
Right.
But yeah, I do use, the MTSS format, but I don't have a lot of kids in each group. I
Okay.
have more like most of my kids are in tier 2 and tier 3.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, our tier 2 and tier 3 students are not our SPED students. Although I pull a couple of my SPED students during that time just because I need them in the room with me to work with them some more. But
Mhm.
it's not SPED students, it's our gen ed students.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some states, and you will get into some of this in some of your other classes, especially maybe on in 805, like I teach at 805 class, or even your school law class. Some of your states now have gotten away from the discrepancy model, qualifying students for special ed and doing the testing, and has switched over to like an RTI or MTSS format where you go through all the interventions before they even can qualify as
Mhm.
compared to where we are basically utilizing the assessment phase to qualify 'em. So I don't know in some of your classes if you got into some detailed discussions about that, but there are states out there that have shifted over to that specific model when it comes to qualifying students for special education services. So
Mhm.
might keep that in mind. I mean, the last count I had, it was upward of 15, I think, states, if I remember correctly, in the country that have made that shift. So maybe seeing more over time. So it's just kind of interesting to see. Now, by throwing that out there, I'm just kind of curious, just based on your experience, do you think using the MTSS model compared to the testing model to qualify, do you think you would see more students qualifying for special services, or do you think it's going to curve that off and you'd see probably less? By having any thought on that?
In our school, I think we'd see more, but
More qualified
Yeah,
ESS model versus testing?
yeah, yeah. We definitely have more kids in tier 3 than we do in SPED.
Okay. Anyone else
I
have
got-
any
I
thoughts on
don't-
that?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm comprehending this the way you are asking it, but my idea is if you, like she said, they're using the MTSS with gen ed kids, and if it's used correctly and effectively, I think that would cut down on your special ed that qualify for special ed.
Yeah.
You know, if yeah, if it's used effectively, you should be able to reach them without putting them in special education. So, but
Okay.
yeah, there definitely has to be interventions. I've had teachers before that want to just immediately throw them into special education,
Yeah.
and that you have got to document numerous interventions that have been tried.
Yes.
Yeah.
So just that comment alone we can get off on a whole other conversation with that, Dana. Seeing
Mhm.
how maybe kids are misidentified where they go
Yeah.
in, districts are used
Disproportionate representation.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And in even where, I mean, I, we uncovered some things that had taken place several years ago, and I'm like, why are there so many that were placed back in this particular
Mhm.
time frame? And come to find out they were just picking one subtest score. I was like, oh no, this is a major
Yeah.
discrepancy. One
Yeah.
sub out of the whole out of just a wide variety of stuff, and they were using that because they just the teachers were pushing to get those kids placed because they didn't want them in that
Right.
class.
Right. They want the perfect classroom.
They want a perfect classroom in.
Yeah.
And
Well, and
and
then once you've got them in there, once they're in there,
yeah,
how hard is it to get them out?
it is very
So
hard to
just
get them out.
follow it
And
all the way through. Yeah.
I'm like, why were the numbers through the roof? And I actually started pulling some files and looking. Of course, I have a background in that testing and all that. And I could look at the testing reports and tell what was going on. I mean, wasn't hard to figure that out. So, um, yeah, just a lot of misidentification. So,
Mhm.
any other thoughts on that?
I was
I I look
just
back.
thinking we have a student. Oh,
Oh, go ahead, Claire.
we have a student at my school right now who he's being like brought up in sit and he's being like they want to push him to evaluation. And I think it's frustrating for us because like he's making progress, but some of the other staff is like, well, he's not making the progress we want, but it's still like I just that's what's hard for me, I think, is if like where I'm like, okay, I could see how maybe like a test could be helpful also to maybe show that like actually this kid's cognitive scores and their achievement scores are actually actually in the average range and they don't qualify. And so I don't know, but I don't see how I don't think he would qualify, but I just think it's interesting how some of the staff at our school are like, well, no, we should still
It is.
evaluate him
You're
for
exactly
SPED
right.
when
Yeah,
You're
happens
exactly
all
right.
the time.
And it's frustrating, especially even on my end as a superintendent, and I'm looking at, like Dana talked about, disproportionality. And if it's a certain percent, and you're getting dinged on that and having to write, improvement plans and how you're going to try to correct that. I mean, that's just one factor, but on the superintendent's side of it, looking at the financial part of
Yeah,
it, um, now one thing that we're having to contend with here is the alternate diploma and how they can keep them in longer at the parent request, which kind of goes back to my discovery on the misidentification. And now trying to show the staff now, because of what was done then when they were younger and they were over identified, and now where they're at now in high school, and the guidelines are changing with this alternative diploma, and knowing that's going to extend their time in the public school setting, it compounds the problem. Staffing
yeah,
wise, financially, your ability to serve them, not having an adequate staff to serve. So it's a ripple effect. And it all goes back to if they would have been properly identified, or if the proper intervention services were provided, it could have been to the point where that student didn't even need to be tested.
right.
Claire,
Different
you brought
outcome.
up something interesting, and I always say this, and when I say it, people look at me like, what? And I always say this, not, and I always clarify, when I say it, I'm not implying that we don't want to provide service and provide help. But ultimately, I always tell them the ultimate goal is to keep them out of special ed. Does that make sense?
Well, that's our objective.
That's your objective. And it goes back to Dana, a comment you said a while ago. Once you get them in, the
Yeah,
chances of getting out of it are very minimal. And you
yep,
guys know that as well as I do.
yep,
And if you prevent them from getting into that and having that label attached, um, I think it definitely falls on us to try to prevent that if we can, and do everything we can to keep them out of there, and keep them in with their peers. They may be on that low average range and they just need, Claire, like you said with your example, if you were to go in and test that student and I'm in there presenting the results, they may fall in that low average range. That doesn't mean they qualify for services. It just shows where they fall. If we put them on that bell curve and put their scores on there, they might be in the 85, low, 80, mid 80s to low 80s, even the upper 70s, that low average range. Some intervention services and over time can help close those gaps to prevent them from having to be put in special education. So anyway, definitely something to think about on that. So sounds like MTSS is pretty much the majority of what you guys use. So there will be some things in your readings on that, also evidence-based practices. I popped up and shared my screen with you. It just kind of shows you in week 6 and week 7, their shared readings and the activities. I did make note on there. There are some interesting modules and presentations on there through Iris in the learning shell. So the first one's on basically accommodations, and then the next one's on evidence-based practices and intervention central through Iris. And those are some short video snippets on there. Then you'll see items 6 and 7. You talk about tier 1 and tier 2 and 3 resources. And so there's some documents on there that has some pretty good information for you. The one thing on there that's very informative that kind of breaks it down, and oftentimes the terms are interchanged and used together, but they are distinctly different. And it says it's a lecture. It's literally, it's one page on there that gives kind of a little breakdown and an explanation of what the difference is between accommodations and interventions. You hear those terms used a lot of times together, but they're different. You know, what kind of technically is an intervention compared to accommodation? So I would encourage you to look at that. Has a good explanation, good breakdown. It's a one-page article on there, provides that information. So week 7 are kind of together, and then even into week 8. So for this module, it is short. You'll see it has the teaching reflection too. And it's basically the group discussion board. So I think we've got everybody in groups. You remember the groups, the options were preschool, then elementary and secondary. So everyone's pretty much assigned to a group. You'll be in that group all the way through for those. So you'll just go on there and kind of provide your reflection. We do that about every 3rd week or so. And so it's interesting when I went through and read those from the reflection one, when you put those in the group discussion board. So I hope you also took some time to kind of look through there and see what some of your peers, some of their experiences, and hopefully you were able to pick up some things from that. Also in the module 2 for these 3 weeks, you'll have a couple more practice quizzes on there. You'll have quiz 3 and 4. Everyone been able to access those all right without any issue, no problem or anything? Okay. The questions seem to be helpful.
Very helpful. I'm taking it on March 8th, so I'm getting ready.
Yeah, I'm taking it March 9th.
March
Oh, wow.
9th. So
Are you
what
doing yours
is
at home,
now?
Sandra? Are you doing it at home?
No, I'm gonna go in.
Or yeah, I'm doing mine online, so we'll see
Okay.
how that goes.
Yeah,
I haven't-
hopefully, we'll hope both of you do well. I will say, based on previous experiences doing this class and getting feedback from students, the practice quizzes, the questions you see are very similar and aligned to what you'll actually see on that test. So it'll be interesting to see if it's still aligned like that. I'll be interested to hear some feedback from both you ladies on that after you do
Okay.
it. Some feedback. It's like, hey, yeah, definitely. It pretty much was very similar to the type of questions we saw in the practice quizzes that we took up to that point. So you guys said you go the 9th and 8th and 9th, or 9th and 10th.
8th and 9th.
Okay, so you'll see this module ends on Sunday the 10th, and that's practice quiz 4. So and you can take those a little bit ahead of time too if you need to. So to give you some practice before you do the actual real test.
Mhm.
And then also on that Sunday, you'll have a just a regular discussion board. It's not the group reflection. It's just the whole class is going in on discussion board and on response number 3, and it's all based on evidence-based practices. So module 2, very short, 3-week. And then remember, we will not have class the week of spring break, which is 11th through the 17th. And then coming off your spring break, we'll meet on that Wednesday because we'll be getting into the 3rd module. And then we'll start moving pretty quick. In module 3, we'll have several things coming up. You'll see the case study student, the overview, and then we'll get into part 2 on that, the lesson plan. Tier 1, Dana mentioned that a while ago and asked the question if it was tier 1, and it is a tier 1 lesson plan. So how are we coming along on what's kind of wanted to touch base with you too? How we come along on practicum hours and documenting on that? Is everyone moving along all right? No problems?
Yeah.
Okay. I know I had several of you guys ask questions about, hey, can I include, my time here, my time over there? And pretty much all of it was fine. I just asked you to make sure you included a variety in there. Don't just rely on one single setting and lumping 3-4 hours at a time in there. Show me a variety of things. That's the one thing that I tried to emphasize when those questions came up before. So any questions on anything up to this point? And then before we go into
Can I ask a question on the case study?
yeah.
Okay, so tell me if I'm right here. We submit part 1, 2, and 3 separately.
Mhm.
Now, do they each have a cover page and they're all, or does part 2 just come in where part 1 stopped?
That's right. Part 2 will come
Okay.
in where part 2 stop
Okay,
because
and
it's
then
less.
on part 4 is where we go back and submit our part 3 and our video to the discussion board.
That's correct.
Okay.
That is
Okay.
correct.
And our PLC group is the same group that we've been working with.
That's exactly right. It's the same
Okay.
group.
Got it.
Once I
Okay.
assigned you to that group, there's 3 options. Remember, preschool, elementary, and secondary. So you're with them all the way through on those
Okay.
group reflections. Now, I want to back up and I want to clarify something to make sure there's no confusion on this. On Sunday the 10th, I mentioned you had practice quiz 4 because that's right there when you guys are doing your actual test, right? I mentioned that. Right below that, there is a discussion board response. That's not the group one. That's just where everyone goes in on that one discussion board and it's on evidence-based practices. Okay, it's not the group board
Right.
you're assigned to, it's the class discussion
Okay.
board.
And then we go and respond to 2 other classmates.
That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
I just want to make sure we're clear on that. I will, as we get closer, I will post a reminder on that just to make sure it's basically a courtesy reminder. Letting everyone know that that is a class discussion board and not your group assigned discussion board.
Okay.
So it'll be a reminder and I'll send it to you email. It'll just say courtesy reminder, discussion board due Sunday, March 10th is a class discussion board and not your group discussion board. Okay.
Also, on the grade book, I think I've messaged you on this, and I need to be looking at it, but it seemed to me it says peer reflection number
Got
4.
them on there multiple times. They did that when a
Yeah,
copy.
and then when I click on them, it says can't go to this page.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know why it did that. It did that when the core shell copied. So I will get a hold of Tiger Tech and see if I
Okay.
can facilitate getting those off. I
Okay.
actually tried and it said, so when I go in, Dana, and try to delete those off, it says something to the fact that this particular assignment is in use. Well, it's not.
No.
It's from a
Right.
other,
Yeah.
semester. Yeah, I'll see if we can
Yeah.
get that cleaned up so it avoids
And you
some.
might, you might ask them about, I mean, like I said, when I click on them, it goes to some guy standing there saying, you can't go to this page or something.
Little
I
cartoon
don't know what it
character on
is.
it. Yeah,
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's what it is.
yeah.
So, okay.
All right. So for module 2, anyone have any questions? Again, it's a short module. It's a 3-week, and then we will be back here together again, coming right off spring break. So on that Wednesday, and I'll send a reminder about the Zoom coming off spring break. Okay. Any questions on that? Claire, you guys good so far? Everything up to this point? Dana, Sandra?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All good.
All
I'll
right.
email you if I don't. If I do any
There you go.
questions. Yeah.
All right. Hey, you guys have a good week. I'll see you back here after spring break. If I don't hear from you before then, have a good spring break. Be safe, relax, have fun. Hopefully, we'll have some awesome weather like we did today. Spring
Yeah.
break.
You too. You have a
All
good
right.
spring break also.
All right. Thank you guys. Take care.
Okay. You
Thank
too.
you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.